The sun, a molten coin, beat down on Maria Whitman's back as she stumbled through the parched landscape. Her cream-colored dress, now a tattered flag of surrender and defiance, clung to bruised legs. She had been running since before the false dawn, when her father's snores still rattled the thin walls of their cabin in Redemption Creek, a name that mocked its very essence. There was no salvation in those dusty streets, no mercy in the preacher's wandering eye. Her father, Esteban Whitman, had promised her to Jack Brennan, the blacksmith whose fists were as hard as the iron he shaped, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey, his temper a quick flaring forge. The wedding was set for today, or perhaps tomorrow. Time had blurred into a desperate, endless flight. Maria pressed on, though her legs screamed and her throat was a desert. The Nebraska territory stretched, vast and unforgiving, a canvas of endless ochre under a hawk-circled sky. She knew the dangers: wolves, rattlesnakes, the scorching sun. Yet, even these seemed kinder fates than Jack Brennan's possessive grip. The wind, carrying the scent of sage, shifted, and with it came the unmistakable aroma of horse sweat and worn leather. Her heart seized. They had found her. She fell to her knees amidst the rough grass, frantically scanning the empty horizon. But the thudding hoofbeats came not from behind, but from the north. A lone rider crested the hill, a stark silhouette against the afternoon sun. Maria's breath hitched. He sat tall, moving as one with his horse, a lifetime etched in the saddle. As he drew closer, she saw the long black hair, unbound, a decorated leather shirt, the proud set of his shoulders. A Lakota warrior. She had heard the stories in Redemption Creek, whispers of raids, scalping, white women vanishing into the vast unknown. Demons, the townspeople called them, without souls or mercy. Yet, as he approached, something in his bearing, perhaps exhaustion or an instinct deeper than fear, rooted her to the spot. His paint mare, brown and white patches gleaming, halted 20 feet away. Dark eyes, unreadable as deep water, assessed her. Maria waited for the glint of a rifle, the flash of a knife. Instead, he raised a hand, palm outward, a universal sign. "You are hurt," he said, his English deep, carefully measured, with only a trace of an accent. Maria tried to speak, but only a croak escaped her parched throat. The world tilted as black spots danced at the edges of her vision. He dismounted in one fluid motion, taller than she expected, lean but powerful, moving with the controlled grace of a mountain cat. From his saddlebag, he produced a water skin. He approached her slowly, as one might approach a wounded deer, offering it. Her hands trembled as she took it, the water warm but clean. She drank greedily until he gently pulled it back. "Slow," he cautioned, his voice a low rumble near her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "Too much will make sick." Up close, he was younger than she'd thought, perhaps 30 winters, with sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and a thin scar from his left eyebrow to his hairline. His eyes held no cruel hunger, only a grave assessment, as if reading the story in her torn dress and bloodied feet. "Please," Maria finally managed. "I can't go back. I can't." He studied her, then glanced back the way she came, his expression hardening. "Men follow." She nodded, fresh tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. "My father, Jack Brennan, they'll make me." She couldn't finish. Wyatt Black Elk, for so she would now think of him, stood and scanned the horizon. Whatever he saw or didn't see decided something for him. He moved back to his horse, pulling a blanket and soft leather strips from his pack. "Feet first," he said, kneeling. When she complied, he began cleaning her wounds with water. His hands were gentle, efficient, attending to her with a touch so alien to her experience it brought a fresh wave of tears. "My name is Wyatt Black Elk," he said, wrapping her feet. "My mother was white, taken in a raid. She chose to stay with my father's people, taught me her tongue." He looked up, his gaze holding hers. "What do they call you?" "Maria," she whispered. "Maria Whitman." "Maria," he tasted the name. "Where you run to?" The question she had avoided. Where could a woman alone go? She had no money, no family, no skills beyond keeping house and avoiding Esteban's fists. "I don't know," she admitted. "Away. Just away." Wyatt finished, sitting back on his heels. The sun was sinking, painting his bronze skin with warm light. "Dark comes soon," he said finally. "Coyotes hunt at night. Men, too." He stood, extending his hand. "You come. I know a place." Maria stared at his hand. Everything she'd been taught screamed warnings: savage, heathen, dangerous. But those same voices had demanded obedience, submission to Esteban and Jack. She took his hand. He lifted her easily, steadying her. He wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, then lifted her onto his paint mare, as if she weighed nothing. She tensed, expecting him to swing up behind her, to press close as men in town would have. Instead, he took the mare's reins and began walking, leading them north toward a line of cottonwoods. They traveled in silence as the sun touched the horizon, setting the grassland ablaze. Maria clutched the blanket, marveling at how different this felt from any other time she'd been near a man. Wyatt walked with steady purpose, occasionally glancing back, but never with that look, the one that made her feel like prey. As purple twilight gathered, they reached the cottonwoods. A stream gurgled, and in a sheltered bend stood a simple shelter of bent saplings and hide. Wyatt helped her down, his touch brief, impersonal. "Rest," he said, gesturing. "I make fire." Maria limped inside, collapsing onto a buffalo robe. She watched him tend to his horse first, removing the saddle, brushing her coat. Only then did he gather wood. The ordinary domesticity of it all, a man doing simple tasks as darkness fell, made her throat tight with unexpected emotion. When had she last felt safe as night approached? Soon, a small fire crackled. Wyatt disappeared, returning with fresh stream water. He set a pot over the fire, adding dried meat and roots. "Eat, then sleep," he said, settling cross-legged. "Tomorrow we go to my people's camp. The women will give you clothes." "Your people?" Fear crept back into her voice. "But I'm white, won't they?" "My mother was white," he reminded her. "Now she is Lakota. It is not blood that makes family." Maria pulled the blanket tighter. "I can't be anyone's family. I won't be owned again." For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched his stern features. "Lakota women are not owned. They choose their path, their husband. They can divorce by putting a man's belongings outside the tipi." He stirred the pot. "You would learn our ways, heal, then choose what you wish. And if men come looking," his expression hardened, "then they learn that Lakota protect those under their care." The simple declaration, spoken without boast, just quiet certainty, made Maria's eyes burn. Protection without possession, strength without cruelty. Such things existed only in her mother's fairy tales. They ate in companionable silence, the stew warming her. Her eyelids grew heavy, but old habits of vigilance were hard to break. "Sleep," Wyatt said gently. "I keep watch, all night." And so Maria Whitman, who had not slept soundly in years, curled up on buffalo robes. A Lakota warrior sat silent by the fire, the vast prairie night singing around them. For the first time, these sounds brought no fear. She slept, dreaming not of the wedding or Esteban's rage, but of running towards something still nameless, but shining with possibility. Maria woke to morning birds and dying embers. Panic seized her, then memory returned. Wyatt still sat by the fire, his silhouette unchanged. Had he truly watched all night? He turned, and in the pale dawn, she saw weariness in his eyes. "The stream is there," he said, pointing. "Clean yourself, I will not look." She emerged, testing her wrapped feet. They hurt, but the leather cushioned the worst. She limped to the stream, finding a secluded spot. The water was cold enough to steal her breath, but she scrubbed away the dirt and dried blood, trying not to think of her vulnerability. When she returned, Wyatt had laid out a soft, worn leather dress, moccasins, and haircloths. "My sister's," he explained. "Dolores has many, will not mine." Maria fingered the dress, marveling at the beadwork along the hem, finer than anything she'd owned. She retreated to the shelter, emerging, transformed. The dress fell to her calves, modest, but allowing freedom of movement she'd never known. "Better," Wyatt said, and she caught approval in his tone. He had already packed the shelter. "Can you ride a little?" She admitted Esteban had owned a plow horse, though she'd rarely been allowed. "Good. Today we share the horse. My camp is one day's ride." He helped her mount, then swung up behind her. Maria tensed, waiting for wandering hands, for his body to press inappropriately close. Instead, he maintained a careful distance, only touching her waist lightly to steady her. They rode north, following no visible trail. The grassland gave way to low hills. He stopped frequently, checking their back trail, letting her drink and rest. During one stop, in the shade of a boulder, Maria finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" He was quiet. "My mother ran too when she was young like you. A trapper found her, brought her to the fort. Soldiers did not help, sent her back to the man who hurt her. She ran again. My father's hunting party found her near frozen. She chose to stay with us, found kindness she never knew with her own people. She lived free. All people deserve this to choose. They continued on. Wyatt began teaching her as they rode. See their tracks of antelope, maybe 1 hour. There, he pointed to scratches on a pine trunk, bear marking territory, old though, safe. Maria listened intently. These were survival skills, freely given. He showed her edible plants, wild turnips, chokecherries, prairie onions. Everything has spirit, he explained. Take only what you need. Give thanks. This way the earth provides always. It was so different from Esteban's attitude. Take everything. Give nothing. Own what you could grab. Maria found herself hungry for this knowledge. As afternoon shadows grew long, they entered a narrow valley. Wyatt suddenly held up a hand, pulling the horse to a stop. His whole body went alert. What is it? Maria whispered. Smoke, not cook fire. Wrong smell. He dismounted silently, helping her down. Wait here. Stay with horse. But Maria had learned too well what happened to women who waited helplessly. I'm coming with you. He studied her face, then nodded once. Together, they crept up the hillside, using juniper bushes for cover. Near the crest, Wyatt dropped to his belly, motioning her to do the same. They peered over. Below, in a small meadow, stood the burned remains of a wagon. Smoke still rose. Maria stifled a gasp. 2 bodies lay beside it, settlers, a man and woman, arrows protruding from their back. Crow, Wyatt muttered, reading signs Maria couldn't see. War party, maybe 6, 7 warriors. 2 hours passed, no more. Are they still near? Number. Took horses, goods, gone east. His expression was grim. This is why I bring you to my people quick. Crow and Lakota are enemies. They would not be gentle with white woman traveling with Lakota warrior. They retreated carefully. Wyatt changed their route, leading them higher into the hills through seemingly impossible paths. Maria understood now the true danger of her situation, not just from Esteban and Jack, but from the complex web of tribal conflicts. As dusk approached, they reached another sheltered spot, a shallow cave. Wyatt worked quickly, his movements economical and watchful. We cannot reach my people today, he said. Too dangerous and dark. Rest here. Leave at first light. Maria helped gather wood, proud when he nodded approval. As they sat by the small fire, sharing dried meat and pemmican, she asked Dolores's dress. Won't she mind you giving it to a stranger? Dolores Morningstar will be glad, he replied. She says I think too much of old hurts. Need to see good in world again. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She will say helping you proves her right. Old hurts. His hand moved unconsciously to his side, where Maria now noticed another scar beneath his shirt. I had a wife once. Winter Dove. Killed in cavalry attack. 4 summers passed. No warning. Soldiers came at dawn, shot into Tippis. Women, children. Did not matter to them. Maria's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Your sorrow cannot change past. But you remind me not all whites are soldiers. Some are just people hurting, needing help. He added another stick to the fire. My mother taught this, but I forgot in my grief. They sat in silence. Maria noticed how he positioned himself between her and the cave entrance, casual but protective. When had she last felt truly guarded, rather than guarded against? Tomorrow, he said, we reach my people before sun is high. You will be safe there. And you? Maria asked. What will your people say about bringing a white woman to camp? Some will speak against it, but my uncle, Don Alejandro Stonehand, is chief. He will remember how my mother came to us, how she became beloved sister and daughter. He will speak for you. He met her eyes across the fire. Do not fear. I will not leave you alone among strangers. The simple promise, made without flourish, nearly undid Maria. In her world, protection always came with a price. Obedience, submission, ownership. But this quiet warrior asked nothing except that she survive, that she choose her own path. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Live free, he replied. That is thanks enough. As the fire burned low, Wyatt began to sing softly in Lakota, a low, melodious chant. Maria didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear, a prayer, a warding against evil. She fell asleep to that ancient music, feeling the impossible luxury of safety. Outside, the vast prairie darkness held its dangers. But inside this small circle of firelight, with this unlikely protector keeping watch, Maria Whitman began to believe she might actually survive to see what choices tomorrow would bring. The The last thing she heard was Wyatt adding wood to the fire, ensuring the light would last until dawn. For the first time, Maria began to understand what honor looked like. The next days blurred together in a rhythm of survival and learning. True to his word, Wyatt had brought Maria to his people's camp, where she was received with curiosity, but not hostility. Don Alejandro Stonehand had listened gravely to her story and granted her sanctuary. Now, as autumn dressed the hills in gold and rust, Maria found herself adapting to a life she could never have imagined. "No, not like that," Dolores Morningstar said, laughing as Maria struggled with scraping a deer hide. "Too much pressure, and you tear. Too little and fur remains. Here, feel." Wyatt's sister guided Maria's hands. "I'm hopeless," Maria sighed. "You learn," Dolores assured her. Across the camp, Maria could see Wyatt working with the younger boys, teaching them to string bows. Sometimes he would glance her way, and she would quickly return to her work, face warming. The days developed a pattern. Mornings with the women, learning endless tasks, hide work, beating, food preparation, gathering. Afternoons, Wyatt would find her for different lessons. "Today we track," he announced one afternoon. Maria set aside her beadwork and followed him. They walked far from camp into a grove of aspens. "What do you see?" he asked. Maria studied the ground. "Deer tracks, but different sizes." "Good. What else?" "Smaller ones are on top." "So, a fawn following its mother." His approving nod made her ridiculously proud. "Yes. How long ago?" She touched a track. "Recent? Edges are still sharp. Maybe 2 hours." "Good eyes." He moved forward, showing her broken twigs, disturbed leaves. "Why important to know this?" "To find game, yes, but also to know who moves through your land: animal, human, friend, enemy. All leave signs." They spent the afternoon tracking the deer, never intending to hunt, just following the story written in the earth. Wyatt was a different teacher than any Maria had known. He never raised his voice, never showed impatience. When she succeeded, his quiet approval meant more than any effusive praise. As they turned back toward camp, they came upon a creek swollen with recent rain. The crossing they'd used before was a rushing torrent. "We go upstream," Wyatt decided, but no better crossing appeared. "I can wade across," Maria offered. "No, too dangerous. I carry you." Before she could protest, he lifted her easily, one arm under her knees, the other around her back. Maria went rigid, memories flooding back. "Breathe," Wyatt said quietly, his voice a low thrum against her ear, not moving. "I will not hurt you." Maria forced herself to relax, to trust. He stepped into the stream, water swirling around his legs. Halfway across, his foot slipped. He compensated instantly, pulling her closer to maintain balance. For a moment, she was pressed against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. His arms around her were protective, not possessive. When they reached the other side, and he set her down gently, Maria found herself reluctant to step away. "Thank you," she managed, voice slightly breathless. Something flickered in his dark eyes, quickly hidden. "Come, camp is near." That evening, as Maria helped serve the communal meal, she overheard two warriors. "Wyatt spends much time with the white woman," one said in Lakota. "He remembers his mother," the other replied, "and perhaps it is time he looked beyond his grief for Winter Dove." Maria kept her face neutral, but her hands trembled. Later, sitting with Dolores, she asked, "Your brother? He truly loved his wife?" Dolores's expression softened. "When she died, I thought he might follow her to the spirit world. For 2 seasons, he was like a ghost himself. Only duty kept him here. And now?" Dolores gave her a knowing look. "Now he teaches a white woman to track deer and carries her across streams. The women talk, you know. They say he smiles again sometimes." Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "He's only being kind. He promised to keep me safe." "My brother does not make promises lightly," Dolores said. "But safety and kindness, these are not why a warrior begins to sing again when he thinks no one listens." That night, unable to sleep, Maria walked to the edge of camp. The vast prairie sky awed her. She wasn't surprised when she heard quiet footsteps. "Can't sleep?" Wyatt asked, coming to stand beside her. "Too many thoughts?" They stood in comfortable silence. Finally, he spoke. "You are different now, stronger." "I'm learning," Maria said, "though I'll never be truly Lakota. Being Lakota is here." He touched his chest. "Not in blood alone. You work hard, respect our ways. The people see this. And you?" The question slipped out. "What do you see?" He was quiet. I see a woman who chose freedom over surrender, who grows stronger each day, who makes my sister laugh and helps the elders without being asked. He paused, his gaze finding hers. I see someone I am glad I found that day on the prairie. Maria's heart beat fast. In her old life, such words from a man would have been a prelude to demands. But Wyatt simply stood there, respecting the space between them. I dream sometimes, she admitted quietly, that Esteban finds me, that he drags me back. Then he would face me, Wyatt said simply. And all my people, you are under our protection now. I don't want to bring trouble to your camp. He turned, his face serious in the starlight. Trouble comes whether we wish it or not. But a life without honor, without protecting those who need protection, this is not life at all. A cold wind swept across the prairie. Maria shivered. Without hesitation, Wyatt removed his blanket and draped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering just a moment on her arms. Come, the night grows cold. As they walked back to camp, Maria, wrapped in his blanket, felt something fundamental shifting inside her. The fear that had been her constant companion was slowly being replaced by something else. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The understanding that strength could be gentle, that protection could be freely given, that a man's honor could be a shelter rather than a cage. She thought of the woman she'd been just weeks ago, bleeding and terrified, ready to accept death over captivity. That woman could never have imagined this. Walking safely through the darkness with a warrior who had shown her more respect in a few weeks than she'd known in a lifetime. Wyatt, she said softly. He paused, looking at her with those deep, patient eyes. Thank you for everything. He inclined his head slightly. You give thanks too much. I do only what is right. But as Maria made her way to Dolores's tipi, still wrapped in his blanket that smelled of sage and wood smoke, she knew it was more than that. In choosing to help her, to teach her, to stand between her and harm without asking anything in return, Wyatt Black Elk had shown her something she'd never believed existed, that there were still good men in the world, men who understood that true strength lay not in taking, but in protecting. Sleep came easier that night, wrapped in his blanket, knowing he was somewhere in the camp, keeping watch. Maria Whitman began to believe she might actually survive to see what choices tomorrow would bring. The morning started like any other. Maria was helping Dolores prepare the morning meal when the dogs began barking. Wyatt appeared at her side, his hand resting on his knife hilt. Stay close to the tipi, he ordered. But Maria recognized the voice that rang out across the morning air. I know she's here, my daughter Maria Whitman. I've come to take her home. Esteban Whitman. He stood in the lead of 5 armed men, his face red with fury. Beside him, the massive frame of Jack Brennan, the blacksmith, made his horse look small. Don Alejandro Stonehand emerged from his teepee, dignified. Wyatt stood at his right hand, translating. Why do white men come armed to our peaceful camp? Esteban spat tobacco juice deliberately close to the chief. We come for stolen property. That woman there, he pointed at Maria, who had emerged despite Wyatt's warning, is my daughter. She was taken by your savage. I was not taken. Maria stepped forward, her voice stronger than she felt. I ran. I chose to leave. Jack Brennan's laugh was ugly. Women don't choose. Girl, you belong to your father until you belong to me. That's the law. White man's law. It has no power here, Wyatt said coldly. Esteban's hand moved toward his pistol. Boy, you'll hand her over, or will. He never finished the threat. Wyatt had drawn his knife, the blade glinting. Around them, Lakota warriors knocked arrows to bowstrings. You are 5. We are many, Wyatt stated simply. And you threaten those under our protection. Protection? Jack Brennan sneered. She's a white woman living with savages. Good Christians have a duty to save her from defilement. Maria found her voice, anger overcoming fear. The only defilement I've known was in your Christian town. These people have shown me more kindness and respect than I ever knew among my own kind. Esteban's face purpled. You ungrateful witch. After everything I did for you, you beat me. The words exploded from Maria. You sold me to him. She pointed at Jack. Like I was cattle. I've seen the bruises he leaves on his horses. I know what he would have done to me. Discipline, Esteban growled. It's what you need. Don Alejandro raised his hand. The woman came to us seeking sanctuary. She has worked alongside our people, learned our ways, shown respect. She stays by her choice, not by force. This is the Lakota way. All people choose their own path. I don't give a damn about your ways. Esteban snarled. She's coming with us now. He dismounted, striding toward Maria. Wyatt moved to intercept. But Maria surprised everyone by stepping forward herself. "No," she said quietly. Esteban stopped, blinking. She had never defied him so directly. "No," she repeated louder. "I will not go. You have no power over me here. You are my father. A father protects. A father cherishes. You did neither." Her voice grew stronger. "I choose to stay with people who understand honor." Esteban's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, hand raised to strike. Wyatt was faster, catching the older man's wrist, holding it immobile. "You will not touch her," Wyatt said, each word precise as a blade. "Not here, not ever again." For a moment, the two men stood frozen. Then Jack Brennan made a fatal error. He drew his pistol. The twang of bowstrings filled the air. Thomas's hat flew off, an arrow having passed close enough to part his hair. His horse reared, nearly unseating him. More arrows thudded into the ground at the horse's feet. "The next ones do not miss," Don Alejandro said calmly, Wyatt translating. "Leave now. Do not return." Esteban wrenched free of Wyatt's grip, backing toward his horse. "This isn't over. I'll be back with the cavalry. They'll burn this whole camp to get her back." "Then they will find nothing," Wyatt replied. "We move like the wind. White man, your soldiers are slow and loud. We hear them coming for miles." "You're making war on the United States," one of the other men shouted. Dolores Morningstar stepped forward, her English clear. "We make war on no one. We protect a woman who asked for help. If this is crime in your world, then your world is broken." The standoff stretched taut. Esteban, even drunk, could count 5 men against 30 warriors. "Get on your horse, Esteban," Jack Brennan growled, holstering his pistol. "We'll handle this proper, through the law." As the men mounted, Esteban locked eyes with Maria. "You're dead to me, girl. You hear? Dead. You've chosen these heathens over your own blood." "I've chosen freedom over slavery," Maria replied. "I've chosen respect over fear. If that makes me dead to you, then I've been dead a long time already." The 5 men galloped away. As the crowd dispersed, Maria found herself shaking, a delayed reaction. Wyatt's hand touched her elbow gently. "You were brave," he said, his voice a low caress. "I was terrified. Courage is not absence of fear. It is acting despite fear." He studied her face. "Your father. He will try again." "I know." Maria looked around the camp. "I've brought danger to your people. Perhaps I should go." "Number." The word was sharp, immediate, then softer. "Number. Running is finished. You stand and fight now. We stand with you." Don Alejandro approached, placing a weathered hand on Maria's shoulder. Wyatt translated, "My uncle says you spoke with the heart of a warrior today. You claimed your freedom before all to see among our people. This is sacred. He names you Wayakawan, Featherwoman, for you have learned to fly free like the eagle." Tears blurred Maria's vision. A name, her own name, chosen, earned. "But eagles must still watch for hunters," the chief continued. "Your father spoke of soldiers. We must prepare." The rest of the day was spent in preparation. Tepes came down, goods were packed. By evening they would be ready to move. Wyatt found her as she helped Dolores. "You did well today," he said. "But this is just the beginning. They will come again with more men, more guns." "I know," Maria replied. "I'm sorry for bringing this trouble." "Stop." His voice was firm. "You bring no trouble. They bring trouble. You bring," he paused. "You bring life back to places that were dead." Before Maria could ask, a young warrior ran up. Wyatt's expression darkened. "Scouts report soldiers. 1 day's ride south. Maybe 20 men." Maria's heart sank. "So soon?" Esteban must have gone straight to the fort. "What will we do?" Wyatt smiled then, a warrior's smile. "What Lakota always do. We disappear like smoke. Let them chase ghosts across the prairie." That night, Maria worked beside the women with new understanding. She was part of something larger, a people who valued freedom above all else. Esteban thought to cage her again, but he didn't understand. She had tasted independence. The stars were bright as Wyatt came to walk with her. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Yes, but it's different now. Before I feared the cage. Now I fear losing my freedom. It's a better fear. I think one worth facing," he nodded. "Tomorrow we go north into the sacred hills. Soldiers do not follow there. Too easy to ambush. Too hard to track. You will be safe." "We will be safe," Maria corrected. "I'm not separate anymore." Your people's danger is mine. In the darkness, she felt his smile. Wyatt. Yes. You understand now. As they stood together, Maria knew the coming days would test her. But she also knew she would not face them alone. Let them come, she thought. They would not find the frightened girl who had fled Redemption Creek. They would find Featherwoman, who had learned to fly. The storm struck without warning. The band was traveling through a narrow canyon when the deluge hit, turning the dry creek bed into a raging torrent. To high ground, Don Alejandro commanded. Maria clung to her horse. Through the driving rain, she saw families scattered, children crying. Then, a rumbling that wasn't thunder. Flash flood. Wyatt's voice cut through the storm. He was suddenly beside her, reaching for her horse's reins. The canyon will fill. We must. His words were cut off by shouting. Through the rain, Maria saw them, mounted soldiers appearing like specters at the canyon's mouth. They had tracked the band after all. There, the white woman, Jack Brennan's voice, carrying over the storm. Everything happened at once. The floodwaters surged higher. Gunshots cracked. Wyatt's horse screamed and went down, throwing him into the churning water. Without thinking, Maria slid from her own mount and plunged after him. The current was brutal, slamming her against rocks, filling her mouth with muddy water. But she had learned to swim in the creek near her childhood home. She fought, searching desperately until she saw him struggling, his left arm hanging uselessly. Wyatt, she grabbed his good arm, using the current to push them toward boulders. They hauled themselves up, gasping. The soldiers had dismounted, exchanging fire with Lakota warriors who had found high ground. But the storm was the greater enemy. Maria watched in horror as a wall of water crashed through the canyon, sweeping away horses, supplies. Your arm, she said, seeing blood seep through Wyatt's shirt. Bullet grazed it. I've had worse. He was scanning the canyon walls. There, a deer trail. Can you climb? Maria nodded, though it looked impossibly steep. They began to climb. They had climbed perhaps 50 feet when Jack Brennan appeared above them. His face was twisted with rage, a possessive fury that chilled Maria's blood. Gotcha now, girl, he snarled, raising his rifle. Wyatt moved to shield her, but his wounded arm slowed him. The gun's barrel swung toward them. Maria didn't think. Her hand found a rock, and she threw it with all the accuracy Wyatt had taught her. It struck Jack squarely in the temple. He staggered, his shot going wild, then slipped on the wet stone. He teetered, arms windmilling, then fell backward with a scream, disappearing into the roaring waters below. Maria stared, shocked by her own actions. Wyatt's good hand found her shoulder. You saved us, he said simply. Come, we must keep climbing. They reached a shallow cave halfway up the canyon wall. The storm raged on, but the cave was dry. Wyatt sank down, his face gray with pain and blood loss. Let me see, Maria demanded, tearing strips from her dress. The bullet had torn through muscle, but not bone. She worked with steady hands. You're trembling, Wyatt observed as she tied the bandage. I killed him, Maria whispered. Jack, I killed a man. You protected us. There is no shame in this. I thought I would feel guilty, but I don't. Does that make me wicked? Wyatt caught her hand. It makes you alive. He would have killed us both, then dragged you back to a life of pain. You chose life over death, freedom over captivity. The Great Spirit does not punish those who defend themselves. Outside, the storm was beginning to pass, but they could still hear gunshots, shouts, the roar of floodwaters. They were cut off. Your people, Maria said. We have to help them. We can do nothing until the flood passes. They are strong, smart, most will have reached safety, but worry creased his brow. They huddled together as night fell, sharing body heat. Maria had never been this close to a man without fear. Wyatt's presence brought only comfort. I'm sorry, she said into the darkness. For what? For bringing this trouble. If they hadn't been chasing me. Stop. His voice was firm. You did not make them cruel. You did not make them chase. You only chose to live free. The consequences are theirs, not yours. They fell quiet. Then Wyatt spoke again. When I pulled Winter Dove from our tipi after the soldiers' attack, she was already gone. I held her as her spirit left, powerless to save her. His good arm tightened slightly around Maria. Today, you pulled me from the water. You fought for my life. This helps heal something I thought would never mend. Maria turned to look at him. You've saved me countless times, and now we save each other. This is partnership. This is what the whites don't understand. Strength shared is strength doubled. Despite everything, Maria felt a profound peace. She had fought for something precious and won. "Wyatt," she said quietly, "what happens when the water goes down? There will be other soldiers, other Jack Brennans. Then we face them together." He paused. "Unless you wish to leave, you could go east, where no one knows you. Start fresh." The suggestion hit Maria like cold water. "Leave? Is that what you want? For me to go?" "Number." The word came quick, forceful, then softer. "No, but I would not cage you with my wanting. You must choose freely." Maria thought of the cage of Esteban's house, the prison of Jack Brennan's expectations. Then she thought of the life she'd found. Dolores's laughter, the pride in Don Alejandro's eyes when he named her Wyatt, Wyatt's careful patience. Most of all, she thought of this moment. "I choose to stay," she said firmly. "This is my family now. You are mine." She paused. "You are mine to protect, as I am yours to protect. If that brings trouble, we face it as one." In the darkness, she felt his smile. "Wyatt, my fierce eagle woman." They stayed awake through the night. When dawn finally came, painting the canyon in gold and revealing the flood's devastation, they were ready. The waters had receded. They found the others gathered on the plateau, counting losses. Dolores ran to them, tears of relief. "We thought you were lost. Your new sister is part fish," Wyatt said. "Your new sister is part fish," Wyatt said with a weak smile, his gaze warm on Maria. "And part warrior. She saved my life twice in one day." As the story spread through the camp, how Maria had pulled Wyatt from the flood, how she had struck down the white man who would have killed them both. The way people looked at her changed. She was no longer just the rescued white woman. She was Wyatt, Feather Woman, who had proven her place among them with courage and blood. That night, as the band made camp in a safer place and mourned their losses, Maria sat with Wyatt as the medicine man tended his wound. She held his hand, offering the same steady presence he had always given her. "No cage," she whispered, when the pain made him grimace. "Not for either of us. Just chosen bonds, freely given." He squeezed her hand in answer. In that simple touch was a promise of all the tomorrows they would face together. Dangerous, uncertain, but theirs to shape with their own choices. The storm had passed, leaving destruction, but also clarity. They had been tested by water and blood, by nature and man's cruelty. They had emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. More importantly, they had emerged together. The autumn moon hung full and bright over the valley where the band had made their semi-permanent camp. 3 moons had passed since the flood and battle in the canyon. Wyatt's arm had healed clean, leaving only a scar to mark where Maria's quick action had saved them both. The threat of soldiers had faded as winter approached. Few cavalry units would risk the harsh plains weather to chase a single white woman who clearly didn't want rescuing. Maria sat outside the teepee she still shared with Dolores Morningstar, working on a pair of winter moccasins. Her hands moved surely now, the beadwork growing beneath her fingers in patterns that told stories. Water and storm, flight and sanctuary, bonds chosen rather than imposed. "You've become quite skilled," Dolores observed, settling beside her. "Those are fine enough for a wedding gift." Maria's hands stilled, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "I'm making them for Wyatt." His winter pair wore through. "Of course you are." Dolores's tone held gentle teasing. "Just as he happened to need new arrow fletching last week and a new knife sheath the week before." She lightly touched Maria's cheek. "Friends help each other." "Friends?" Dolores laughed, a warm, knowing sound. "Is that what you call it when he watches you like the sunrise? When you forget words mid-sentence if he walks by?" Maria focused intently on her beadwork, feigning concentration. Over the passing moons, something had indeed shifted between her and Wyatt. The careful, respectful distance he'd always maintained had gradually dissolved, replaced by countless small intimacies. A hand on her elbow to steady her. Sitting close during evening stories, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The way his eyes, dark and deep, would find hers across the camp, holding meanings she was only just beginning to decipher, meanings that made her breath catch. "Among our people," Dolores continued, her voice more serious now, "divorce is simple. But what of the opposite? How does a woman show a man she chooses him?" Maria looked up, finding Dolores's eyes full of understanding. "I know you were taught that joining with a man means pain and submission. But I've also seen how you look at my brother. Not with fear anymore." It was true. Somewhere between learning to track deer and fighting floods, between shared silences and steady protection, Fear had transformed into something else entirely. When Wyatt smiled, truly smiled, not just the slight softening of his usual serious expression, but a rare, full smile that lit his eyes, Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest, a tremor through her very core. When he guided her hands to show her a new skill, his touch gentle yet firm, she found herself wishing the lesson would last longer, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from his body. "Among our people," Dolores said gently, "a woman might show interest by preparing special foods for a man, by decorating his belongings, by seeking his company for walks." She paused meaningfully, her gaze dropping to the moccasins. "By making him winter moccasins, with patterns that speak of partnership." Maria studied the beadwork under her hands, unconsciously. She had been creating interlocking designs, paths that wove together, separated, but always returned to unity. That evening, as the camp settled into nighttime routines, Maria found herself walking toward the grove where Wyatt often went to think. He stood with his back to her, watching the stars emerge, but turned at her approach, as if sensing her presence through the very earth. "Wyatt, you should be by the fires. The night grows cold." "I'm not cold," she said, though Autumn's bite was sharp. Her voice, usually so steady with him, held a new tremor. "I wanted to, that is, I finished these." She held out the moccasins, moonlight catching the careful beadwork. Wyatt took them slowly, his eyes scanning the patterns, understanding dawning in their depths. "These are very fine," he said carefully, his voice a low, gravelly sound that resonated deep within her. "The design speaks of choice," Maria interrupted, her courage suddenly fierce, fueled by a deep, undeniable longing. "Of paths that join by will, not force. Of partnership born from respect, not ownership." Wyatt set the moccasins aside with great care, placing them on a smooth stone as if they were a sacred offering. Then he stepped closer. Even now, he stopped just beyond arm's reach, letting her set the distance, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that stole her breath. "Maria," he said, using her white name, as he did in moments of deep emotion, "you know my heart. Have known it for moons now, but I made promises to never hurt you, to before causing you pain." Maria took a step forward, closing some of the distance between them. The scent of wood smoke and prairie, uniquely him, enveloped her. "You've kept those promises. But Wyatt, I'm not that terrified woman you found on the prairie anymore. I've learned to fight floods and soldiers. I've taken a life to save yours. I found my strength." She took another step, her heart pounding a wild drum against her ribs. "Now I want to learn what lies beyond fear." "Be certain," he said, his voice rougher now, a barely suppressed tremor in his tone. "I have waited. I can wait longer. I don't want to wait." The words came out in a rush, a surge of raw, honest emotion. "When you were wounded, when I thought I might lose you, I realized I've been letting my past steal my future. Jack Brennan is dead. Esteban thinks me dead. But I'm alive, Wyatt. For the first time in my life, truly alive, and I choose." She didn't finish because Wyatt closed the remaining distance, his hand coming up to cup her face with infinite gentleness, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. The touch, which would have terrified her months ago, now ignited a profound ache, a sweet longing that was entirely new. "What do you choose, Wyatt?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his gaze locked on hers. "You," she breathed, her own hand rising to mirror his, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw, the thin scar above his brow. "I choose you, not because I need protection anymore, but because I want partnership. Not because you saved me, but because you let me save myself." His thumb traced her cheekbone again, and Maria leaned into the touch, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "Among my people," Wyatt said softly, his forehead resting against hers, "a man must court properly, bring gifts to the woman's family, prove his worth." "You've been courting me since the day we met," Maria replied, her voice husky. "Every lesson, every patient moment, every time you saw me as a person instead of property. I need no horses or blankets to know your worth. Your ways are still new, your healing still fresh. I would not rush." Maria silenced him by leaning in, her lips brushing lightly against his. The first hesitant, electrifying touch. "Then don't rush," she whispered against his mouth, her fingers tangling in his long, dark hair. "But don't hold back either. Show me what it means to be wanted without being consumed. Teach me this, like you've taught me everything else." In the moonlight, she saw his control finally crack. Not into hunger or demand, but into something far more powerful, Tenderness mixed with desire, protection married to passion. He lowered his forehead to rest against hers, their breaths mingling. "I have loved you since you threw that rock at Jack Brennan," he admitted, his voice a low growl of affection. "Fierce eagle woman who fights for what she claims. And I have loved you since you wrapped my feet by the stream." Maria's voice was barely a breath, filled with a revelation that blossomed in her soul. "Gentle warrior who gives without taking. But I didn't know love could exist without fear until you showed me." They stood that way for a long moment, sharing breath, hearts beating in rhythm. Then Wyatt pulled back slightly, his eyes serious, almost solemn in their intensity. "If we do this, if we join our paths, it must be in the open, with honor. You deserve a proper wedding, witnesses to our choice." Maria smiled, a genuine, joyful curve of her lips. Dolores Morningstar has been dropping hints about wedding preparations for weeks. She already sees much. A rare, full smile touched his lips, transforming his face. "Will you make me court you properly, at least for a few days? Will there be more midnight walks? More excuses to sit closed during stories?" "Many," she promised, her heart soaring. "And I will wear your moccasins so all can see your claim on me." "Good," Wyatt said firmly, his eyes twinkling. "Because I find I'm quite possessive of what I choose freely." He laughed then, a sound she'd rarely heard, rich and full of joy, echoing in the quiet night. "As am I. But possessive like the eagle with the sky, not seeking to cage, but to soar together." They walked back to camp hand in hand, a simple touch that spoke volumes. Warriors nodded approval. Women smiled knowingly. Dolores Morningstar actually clapped her hands in delight. That night, Maria lay in her buffalo robes, not yearning for something out of reach, but anticipating something approaching. Outside, she could hear Wyatt's voice among the men, probably enduring good-natured teasing about the moccasins he wore. She thought of the girl she'd been, terrorized by the very idea of a man's touch. Convinced that intimacy meant pain, that love was just another word for ownership. That girl still lived inside her, a memory, a part of her story. But she no longer ruled Maria's choices. Tomorrow, Wyatt would bring gifts to Don Alejandro Stonehand, perhaps a fine horse, since the chief had little use for the horses taken from Esteban's group, but understood the ceremony's importance. There would be feasting, celebrating, the joining of two paths that had already grown, so intertwined it was hard to see where one ended and the other began. But tonight, Maria simply held the knowledge close to her heart. She had chosen love over fear, trust over terror. And somewhere in the camp, a Lakota warrior wore moccasins that declared to all who could read the signs, "This woman claims this man. This man treasures this woman. These two choose each other freely." The full moon blessed the valley with silver light. And Maria Whitman, Wyakawin, finally understood what her mother had never known. That love without choice was just another cage. But love freely given and received was the greatest freedom of all. Dawn broke golden across the prairie, painting the grassland in shades of amber and rose. Maria stood at the edge of camp, wrapped in the wedding blanket Wyatt's grandmother had woven decades ago. The ceremony had been simple yet profound, Don Alejandro speaking words of binding while they stood before the sacred fire, the whole band witnessing their choice to walk as one. Now, as the camp stirred to life on this first morning of their married life, Maria watched the sunrise with new eyes. Wyatt emerged from their teepee, their own dwelling, now raised by the community as a wedding gift. He moved to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her and folding her in warmth and safety. His body, strong and warm against her back, sent a shiver of pure contentment through her. "No regrets?" he asked quietly, his breath warm against her ear, his lips brushing the sensitive skin below her earlobe. Maria leaned back into him, marveling at how natural it felt, only that it took so long to get here. The night had been a revelation. True to every promise, Wyatt had been endlessly patient, endlessly gentle. Where she had expected pain, she found exquisite tenderness. Where she had feared demand, she discovered giving, a dance of mutual pleasure. He had read her body like he read trail signs, attentive to every response, ensuring her comfort before seeking his own satisfaction. For the first time, Maria understood what her mother had never known. That intimacy could be a conversation, a shared journey of discovery, not a conquest. "The scouts report buffalo moving south," Wyatt said, his voice a low rumble. "The band will follow. It means leaving this valley. Then we go," Maria replied simply, turning in his arms to face him, her eyes shining. "Home isn't a place anymore. It's wherever we stand together. He held her face in his hands, his thumbs caressing her cheeks, his gaze searching hers in the morning light. You've changed so much from the frightened woman I found. No, Maria corrected gently, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer until their foreheads touched. I've become who I always was, beneath the fear. You didn't change me, Wyatt. You gave me space to change myself. They were interrupted by Dolores Morningstar's cheerful call. Stop watching the sunrise and come eat. Married life doesn't excuse you from daily work. Laughing, they joined the others for the morning meal. Maria moved through the familiar routines with new belonging. She wasn't a guest anymore, or even adopted family. She was wife to a respected warrior, with her own place in the intricate web of relationships that bound the band together. As the camp prepared for travel, Maria worked alongside the other women, dismantling teepees with practiced efficiency. She caught some of the older women watching her with approval. This white woman who had learned their ways, who had proven herself in flood and battle, who made their Wyatt smile again after his long grief. You're truly one of us now, Blue Shell Woman said as they worked. Not by blood, but by choice. The strongest bonds are those we choose. The truth of those words resonated deeply. Maria thought of Esteban, her blood kin, who had tried to sell her like cattle. Then she looked at these women, Lakota by birth, who had taught her, protected her, celebrated her victories. Family, she realized, was more than shared ancestry. It was shared values, mutual respect, chosen loyalty. By midday, the band was moving, following the ancient paths their people had traveled for generations. Maria rode beside Wyatt, comfortable now on her own pony, a wedding gift from the band. As they crested a hill, the vista before them took her breath away. Endless grassland rippling like a golden ocean, dotted with wildflowers beneath a sky so vast it seemed to hold eternity. It's beautiful, she breathed, her hand finding Wyatt's as their ponies walked side by side. This is what they would take from us, Wyatt said, his voice carrying an edge of sadness, his fingers tightening around hers. The whites push ever westward, claiming land that cannot be owned, fencing what should run free. Maria heard the unspoken worry. Their idyllic life, this freedom she'd found, existed in a shrinking bubble. Every year brought more settlers, more soldiers, more pressure on the traditional ways. Whatever comes, she said firmly, her gaze meeting his, resolute. We face it together. Together? Yes. They made camp that evening by a clear stream, the kind of spot Wyatt had taught her to recognize. Water, shelter, good sightlines for defense. As Maria helped raise their tipi, she marveled at how natural it all felt now. Her hands knew the work. Her body had strengthened. Her mind had expanded to hold new languages, new skills, new ways of seeing. After the evening meal, as stars began to pierce the darkening sky, an elder named Singing Crow called for stories. One by one, people shared tales of hunts and heroes, of wisdom learned and lessons taught. Then Singing Crow turned to Maria. Wayakawin, he said formally, his gaze warm and inviting. You have a story now. Will you share it? Maria felt all eyes turned to her. Once, such attention would have made her shrink, try to disappear. Now she sat straighter, finding her voice, a new confidence resonating within. I'll tell of a woman who lived in a cage, she began, who was taught that walls meant safety and chains meant love. She told it all, the fear, the flight, the warrior who showed her that strength could be gentle. She spoke of learning to track and hunt, to scrape hides and bead moccasins, of facing her father's claim and choosing her own path, of flood and battle, of saving and being saved. This woman learned that freedom isn't just absence of chains, Maria concluded, her voice clear and strong. It's the presence of choice. Every day she chooses to stay, to learn, to love, to fight for this life she's built. And every day the choice makes her stronger. Silence greeted the end of her tale, then nods of approval, murmurs of agreement. She had told it well, in the way of their oral traditions, making the personal universal. Later, in the privacy of their tipi, Wyatt held her close, his chin resting on her head. You told our story beautifully, he murmured, his breath stirring her hair. Our story isn't finished, Maria replied, looking up at him, her eyes alight with a fierce, joyful determination. It's just beginning. Then we ride it together, day by day. They made love slowly, still learning each other's rhythms, still marveling at the trust that allowed such vulnerability. Maria, who had once believed a woman's lot was to endure, discovered she could ask for what she wanted, could guide and be guided, could find joy in giving pleasure as much as receiving it. Afterward, they lay entwined, listening to the night sounds of the camp, dogs settling, babies fussing, the soft voices of those on watch. Safe sounds, home sounds. I used to dream of escape, Maria murmured against his chest. Now I dream of staying, of children who will run free across this grassland, of growing old beside you, becoming one of those wise women who teach young ones to bead. These are good dreams, Wyatt said, his arm tightening around her. Worth fighting for when the hard times come. Will they come? The hard times? Yes, he answered honestly. The white world presses closer each year. But we've survived hard times before. We'll survive them again. Maria thought of the journey that had brought her here, from a terrified woman fleeing an arranged marriage to a wife lying content in her husband's arms. Every step had required courage, from that first desperate flight to the daily choice to try, to learn, to trust. Then we face them as we face everything, she said, raising her head to meet his gaze, her voice firm. Together. No cages for either of us, just chosen bonds. Wyatt's arms tightened around her. I'll die before I let anyone cage you again, and I'll fight beside you to keep us both free, Maria promised in return. Outside their teepee, the prairie wind sang its eternal song. Stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had witnessed her desperate flight, now watching over her chosen home. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The constant movement of nomadic life, the endless work of survival, the looming threats from an expanding nation that didn't understand or respect the indigenous way of life. But tonight, Maria Whitman, Wyatt Featherwoman, wife of Wyatt Black Elk, rested in the certainty of love freely given and received. She had learned to track and hunt, to work hides and speak Lakota. More importantly, she had learned to trust, to choose, to fly free. The girl who had fled Redemption Creek would barely recognize the woman she'd become. That girl had known only fear, had accepted that marriage meant ownership, that a woman's voice should stay silent, her desires unspoken. This woman spoke her mind in counsel, rode her pony with skill across difficult terrain, could track a deer or defend a loved one with equal, fierce competence. This woman knew that true strength lay not in dominance, but in partnership. That love was not a cage, but wings. As sleep claimed her, Maria smiled. Tomorrow, she and Wyatt would ride toward the horizon together, following the buffalo, fleeing nothing, chasing only the promise of another day lived free. Whatever the future held, soldiers or settlers, hardship or plenty, they would meet it as equals, as partners, as two people who had chosen each other and continued to make that choice with every sunrise. The prairie wind whispered through the teepee walls, carrying dreams of buffalo and freedom, of children yet to be born who would know both worlds, of love that transcended the boundaries others tried to impose. And somewhere in that wind, Maria could swear she heard the cry of an eagle, wild and free, soaring on currents no cage could ever contain.